of tension is clenching your jaw, and she's clenching her jaw so tightly that she cracks one of her molars. And when that molar cracks, she feels that just stark, there's no other way to explain the intensity of the pain that she's experiencing from this separation other than to have literally broken a bone in her own body. There we go. Hi, everybody. It's me, Kamilah Rose, and I know it's been a minute. It's always been a minute, right? But we're doing great over here. I just went to go see Mother Mary. So I was like, oh, I have to come. I have to come and I have to sit down with you all and talk about this film because it was phenomenal. I greatly enjoyed it. Let's talk about some of the symbolism because you know it's my type of movie. It's my type of movie. It's a spooky, spiritual, witchy kind of film, all right? So let's get into it. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here and watched some of my other reviews, watched some of my other videos, I have no idea what channel this is going up on, but thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. What did you enjoy the most about this film? What confused you? What did you not like? I was a little on the fence. In fact, it took a lot for me to convince myself to even go and watch this movie, and especially to go and have to pay for it. But I am glad that I went. The role that Anne Hathaway plays as Mother Mary, and then we have Michaela Coel, who is playing Sam Anslem, and then we have Hunter Shafer, who is playing Hilda. Just amazing. Everyone was just amazing. I loved the contrast. I love the ability to tell a story through the line. When Anne Hathaway as Mother Mary is having these moments, because I'm watching the beginning of the film, you know, and the credits are coming on and everything, and I see someone falling off of the stage, and I was like, oh, we're doing this kind of film. We're doing this kind of film. Okay, this is what this is going to be about. But we don't get to that story of what really happened during that moment till much later on. This is a spoiler full of spoilers. So if you're not interested in that, go watch the film, come back and watch this, okay? But we see Anne Hathaway's character, who is this obviously very highly successful, highly creative, emotionally intelligent, and able to convey them through her music, through her performance, to captivate and hold the attention of the audience as, you know, anyone who is standing in this role of the overlap between art and theater and the performance on the stage, the front stage, the backstage. Goffman, sociological theorist that talks about how we are always performing and how the world is kind of a stage, and that we have the front stage where, you know, we're out and we're doing what everyone is expecting us to. Like Anne Hathaway was on the stage and she, you know, says repeatedly in the film, you know, this is what I do, this is what people want from me. And, you know, Sam is constantly kind of poking at her to say, yeah, you always do exactly what you're told to do, what you're programmed to do, what people want you to do. Well, how do I know that you're being sincere and you're being authentic if you're just giving me what I want? You're giving me the performance that I came here for. Or, well, more so that she came there for, because Mother Mary comes to her. And then the backstage is where we take the mask off and we are able to just kind of be ourselves and be not this person, not even the persona of the people who are closest to us, but our truest, rawest selves, how we're constantly creating those things. And so we get a very real kind of look at that molding of the creation of a character of someone who is a performer. And she's going through this moment and they're trying to put her in this outfit and she hates it. She hates it. She hates everything about it. And then she's like, I have to get out of here. And Michaela Coel, I think it's Michaela Coel, but someone is narrating at the beginning of the movie and they're saying that they can feel her coming. They feel the energy of her coming and that there's nothing they can do about it. She's just on her way. Sam Anslem, Michaela Coel's at her home, her castle, all these things. And Anne Hathaway just busts, you know, and they're in the flurry, you know, they're doing fittings and they're making outfits stuff. And we find Sam has this show that's coming up, her big show, and Hunter Shafer's the assistant who's, you know, running around and keeping everything moving. Hunter Shafer is always, she's so gorgeous. And Anne Hathaway doesn't care. She's like, I need to see Sam. I must see her now. This kind of nervous energy because people can tell that they know who this is. It would be like if Lady Gaga showed up somewhere and was like, I need to see this designer. They know who she is, but there's this history. So there's this unease, but also this star in this space, in this abode, in this home is Sam, not Mother Mary. But she's running around kind of doing her thing, and so eventually she runs up and she finds Sam laying down on the floor with his headache. And there's this back and forth that goes on between them, this beautiful dance. They're such reflections of each other. And you see this space where I think one of the things I really love, that I'm going to talk about race here, so if that makes you uncomfortable, don't know what to tell you, but you see this conversation going on. I'm not sure if the director meant this intentionally or if this is just the way that it worked out because of who was hired for the film. But between this Black woman who has natural hair in locks, looks like freeform. And so when the light's behind them, it looks like the hair of snakes, Medusa. When it's interesting because you always see the snake going up Anne Hathaway's arm. So you always see the snake that's going up her own arm, and you only ever see it partially. And she has these tattoos on her hand. But every time you see Michaela Coel with the hair and it's lit up in the back, she has a halo as well. She gets all these natural halos because of her hair. But it also has this free-form, transformative energy, right? Because that's what snakes represent. They represent cycles, they represent transformation, they represent releasing, they represent inner work and a journey. And you could definitely say that this movie kind of reflects as the likes of Possession, as the likes of Suspiria, as the likes of The Fabric. But Michaela Coel and this Sam Anslem role plays this Black fashion designer. She's a Black fashion designer who started off originally with her best friend, who became Mother Mary, and they were a team. They worked together. And there is some, and at least I read it this way, sometimes some maybe more than friends energy, but nothing that apparently we ever see of moving into a explicitly, overtly stated sexual or romantic relationship, but some undertones there, that this was more than friendship. Even if maybe it wasn't any type of romance, but it was a depth of like a soulmate type of connection. That literally, you know, as we're seeing these things happen and they're in these two different spaces, they feel each other across the ocean, and the things that impacts one impacts the other. So they're very closely tied together. And in such, because it's a role of the creator and the creation, Sam Anslem is the kind of genius behind the image and the aesthetic of Mother Mary, with these crowns that she would wear, headdresses that would create that halo effect, with these very elaborate costumes that were presenting her in these different roles and these different embodiment of the message that was being conveyed through her music, her albums, her art. We see the creator that birthed this being of Mother Mary, and how there's a scene where I created this. She pulls out this drawer, this box that has all these images and things related to that time when she was still working with her. And she pulls out the Vogue magazine with her in the image of Joan of Arc. The quote from the article in Vogue is, "I saw myself as Joan of Arc." And she said, "I saw you as Joan of Arc. And I made that. I helped create that." And she said, "But it was it was us. I always saw it as us. It wasn't me creating that and then you wearing it. It was us creating it together." But then Anne Hathaway saw it as, well, I'm Mother Mary, and when the performance is happening, I'm the one who has to carry the role. So you don't feel the weight of the responsibility because you don't have to be on the stage carrying the role. And Michaela Coel is like, but it was us. And that's where the us part comes in, is that, yes, you carried the weight on the stage and did the performance, but I was planting the seeds and doing the work. She's constantly saying, are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to do the work? Are you expecting me to still do all the work? Michaela Coel, as Sam Anslem, was doing all the work of the creating to even make the mantle upon which Anne Hathaway's character had to carry the weight of. There was no mantle, there was no weight without the creator. So she always saw it as as a relationship, a partnership. And Anne Hathaway saw it as she began to climb and gained fame as just her. And I thought that was such an interesting commentary on the role that Black women have played in society, in the world, you know, of being the seed, the mother of humanity, and yet constantly kind of being pushed to the side or forgotten, or having to deal with, I think, the reality of it, especially we look at it from a Jungian perspective, the reality of the separation of individuation. Because even as they came together in a partnership, when we create, when we birth, when we mother things, at some point, that which has been created must break away. It goes through a separation, ego separation, ego alienation. If we were to look at it through this Jungian process of that, when Anne Hathaway, as Mother Mary, said that I'm going to go do my own thing and never seemed to explicitly say, what Anne Hathaway says is, I told you explicitly. And Michaela Coel says, no, what you said was that you wanted change, but you never said that that change didn't include me and that you'd already made the decision. It was already over. You didn't convey that message to me. And so what we then have is Mother Mary is kind of the independent, the child who now wants to go on and make themselves and do their own thing and go through their own process and be free, be independent, be their own self. And what Sam Anslem is going through is the sorrow and the grief of their child leaving the nest, of growing up and wanting to go off on their own, and of losing that connection with their creation. It also then makes me think of Frankenstein, but in a very different manner, because obviously that's about creation and mothering and like from a masculine perspective. But what happens when the creature, when the creation goes off on its own and no longer wants to be connected to its creator? What is the creator? So it's the viewpoint from the mother. And Michaela Coel talks about how in her role as Sam, like, do you know the last time I saw you? She said, I went to your concert and I was in the front row and I was just hoping, that maybe you would see me, and maybe you didn't, maybe you did, and you just, didn't acknowledge me. She said, but you were magnificent. And I think that there is something to say that, like, there is an acknowledgement that Anne Hathaway as Mother Mary as this archetype of who she has become is magnificent. She is able to get on stage and embody this energy, this role, and she owns it and it's hers. But that it's not something she created on her own. And so when Sam is in the audience and she's not being acknowledged, and then Mother Mary sings the song and she just feels this anger bubble up within her, this pain. And the pain, and she's clenching her jaw so tight. And we talk about so much about nervous system management and being able to regulate our nervous systems, and how, one of the signs of tension is clenching your jaw. And she's clenching her jaw so tightly that she cracks one of her molars. And when that molar cracks, she feels that just stark. There's no other way to explain the intensity of the pain that she's experiencing from this separation other than to have literally broken a bone in her own body, to have cracked her own tooth within her own body. A permanent, we can't get these things back. They're not growing back. That's going to need medical attention to be fixed. It is a part of her. And the pain that she's feeling from this separation, in which she had no part of, was something that could only be expressed through the cracking of this molar, which we use, to chew, to break things down so they could be ingested. That this was something that a part of her she was never going to be able to get back. And she talked about how she put a part of who she was into every design and dress and outfit that she made for Mother Mary. A part of Sam was in each one of those designs. So it was a partnership, she saw it. But it wasn't the same view and it wasn't the same experience for Mother Mary. But how often that happens for Black women across the diaspora, from the earliest to the current, of putting a piece of ourselves into what we create, into what we do, anything that we do, and then seeing that leave and go away and at times be taken away from us. It's a complicated space for creating this person, this star of a performer as Mother Mary, who is held by this individual, but is also carrying all these pieces of all these other people. And we'll get into FK Twigs and then the Mother Mary scene in a moment. But the pain that brings on, and that then Sam must create herself. Because what she'd been doing was taking these parts of herself and imbuing them into her art, into her creation, but it was going towards someone else. Someone else was taking that energy and bringing it to the front stage. And Sam wasn't able to utilize that energy for herself. So this moment of the cracking of the molar, the pain, it was a transmutation of the energy of taking the pain and using it to create something new. And the interesting thing was, she's like, I had to get out of there because I'm bleeding all over the place. And obviously I'm in this terrible pain and I have to go. And I wasn't there to listen to the last song. And maybe that one would have healed me. Holy Spirit is what the song was called. But, I didn't stay. And she says, but then when I was in bed, she was like, this is when things get weird. When I was in bed, laying down, I woke up and my mouth had started bleeding again. And at first she tells the story about pulling out the molar with a pliers and stuff, but she was like, no, I went to the dentist. But she said this trail of blood was left all the way from my mouth down the bed and onto the floor. And when I looked on the floor, there was a ghost. And she goes into this beautiful explanation of this ghost. She said it was a spirit, it was something, an apparition, and it was a she. And Mother Mary's like, it's a she. You knew it was a she. And she was like, it was a she. And the way that they created the flow of this red sheet of sheer fabric, beautiful. At times it looked like a vulva, at times it looked like a woman, at times it looked like hands coming down. There's a beautiful scene for that one. But she said, I saw it, and she said, and I couldn't keep it here. I knew I had to let it go. And I said, how phenomenal that in this very short period of time, going through this experience, she is now at this space where she's not trying to hold on to things in the same way that she was. She is immediately like, this spirit must be released. It must be set free. So she opens up the door and she lets the spirit, fabric go out and it's wafting through the woods. And so then we hear, Anne Hathaway as Mother Mary is saying, I also had an encounter with the spirit. And I think it's funny because Michaela Coel I can't even have this very emotional catharsis. I can't even have that. You also have to have an interaction with this spirit. And it's so funny. Oh, I too have suffered. But Mother Mary is very insistent. She's like, no, you don't understand. Because her engagement is different. And it's a very different experience. And let's get into that.